Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have the privilege of answering some questions that you have thoughtfully asked in our question box on our website. So thank you for giving us some food for thought, some fodder for discussion, and we are going to enjoy it, I think. And Katie's going to be surprised by some of these questions, I think, as well. Folks, thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. If you do enjoy it, if you're able to leave a rating or a review on whatever platform you listen on, that would bless us and really help the podcast as well. And if you watch our podcast on YouTube, if you're able to hit the subscribe button, that really helps our channel grow and reach more people as well. With that said, let's get this thing rolling.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right, Catherine Joy, what are your thoughts on Christians? Okay, I can do this. You ready? All right, Catherine Joy, what are your thoughts on Christian dating/engaged couples going on vacation together?
Well, what are your thoughts? Do you want to share your thoughts first, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems a little dicey, just like putting yourself in unnecessarily precarious situations as it stands for there being moral compromise.
Wow, that was quite a sentence right there.
Yeah, I think I got kind of nervous when you put the question back on me. Yeah. I was like, well,
you
actually,
went, really official, like.
I don't even think my answer made sense. But
I think it did. It was good. What's funny is I think like the details of this matter. Like, are you going with her family to Mexico, like all together? Is it only you and him, basically? Like, is it only you going as a couple and that's it?
Oh, I guess that's how I pictured it when I...
Because if that's what they're saying, then I think of that verse. This is what my mom would always bring up. So it's that verse that says to avoid the appearance of evil. And I just think you're in a position with zero accountability where, that's its own problem because that's going to be hard for you guys with no accountability. But then the other thing is it doesn't look good. It's not, I don't think it's very telling of like it just leaves room for gossip or the rumor mill or just whatever. It's just the appearance of evil because really people don't know what's going on.
Sure. Like the appearance for people that know them personally and know that they're going on vacation together? Or
yeah, basically, like you just don't. It doesn't look good. Okay.
I guess to who? I guess it's
to anybody.
To anybody.
If an unmarried couple going on vacation together.
Okay, maybe how would anybody know that they're on vacation together?
I mean, hopefully people they know.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's like when we were dating, we would be in coffee shops and restaurants, driving in the car together. I don't know how that. Who would know whether or not we're on vacation or not on vacation?
Oh, it's not like the server at your restaurant. I'm talking about people that know you.
People that know you and they hear oh, they want to, got it. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. To me, it's just, and then on a very practical note, it's a pretty unwise situation to be in. Think of that other verse, like the simple pass on and are punished. You're putting yourself in a situation where there's zero accountability. And, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem smart to me.
When people ask me about dating scenarios or like, well, what would you do in this situation? We're long distance or, her dad wants me to finish school or to move into my home. And so there's this kind of extended runway that they have for themselves. I don't know what to say because our mindset and our parents' mindset was, once we decided we wanted to get married, which was very soon after dating the second time, we wanted to expedite the wedding. Not, we wanted to have an enjoyable wedding. We wanted our friends and family to be able to come. So we wanted there to be, I guess, what we considered ample time to plan a wedding. But your and I's perspective on dating and engagement was not like, how much fun can we have during the season? We were like on a mission. And so by the time we started dating and then we were engaged a couple months later, and we weren't thinking like, let's go on vacation. We didn't even do very romantic dates. It was like, we had fun.
Yeah,
and
we didn't
were,
need to like up the romance in our relationship.
right. But
Like I feel like we weren't trying to like, oh, have these like, mind blowing dates or whatever.
yes. Or like, hey, let's go
Yeah.
camping or let's go on a fun vacation.
Yeah.
It's like any extra time we did have. So we loved hanging out with each other. We spent a lot of time with each other, but we also wanted to put time into our greater future.
Yeah.
Which was, so I was working a ton or trying to get my real estate business going and all that stuff. And so, I don't relate with people that are in these extended dating and engagement relationships. I've never,
Yeah, like if you want to go on a vacation, like get married and go on a honeymoon.
that was always what we thought.
That was our mindset, I should
Right.
say. But like if I'm thinking like, okay, you're going camping in the woods, like you think of any other society until our culture where people live together all the time. So society's just not stressed out about it. It was never appropriate for a man and a woman to spend the night
Oh, right.
alone.
Right.
To me, that's
Like even if they were in separate tents or whatever.
exactly. I mean, if you're in the same tent, like, I mean, I don't think we could have made it through that.
In the same tent?
If we were dating or whatever.
Why would you? No.
That's what
I
I'm
thought we
saying,
were
but
talking about Christians here. Come on.
But I'm saying a lot of people do stuff like that still as Christians. They're like, oh, well, we didn't sleep together or whatever, in terms of sexually.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of view all of it as like, it's not very smart. It's not, it makes it uncomfortable for other people. And I just think it's inappropriate.
Yeah, that would be such a
just
miserable
inappropriate.
night too. Like, who's gonna? There's no way.
I mean, how much do you guys like each other is the question.
Yeah.
If you actually really like each other, all these situations are going to be incredibly difficult.
Sure.
If you're like vanilla with the other person, then just break up, okay?
Yes. Yeah. So, anyways, I guess we would never advise that, and I don't think it's
Something
wise.
that I should say, growing up, is my mom was like, never be alone with a man until you're married in a room.
Oh, okay.
Like never be alone together in a room until you're married. And then don't be alone with a man in a room that's not your husband forever after.
Nice.
And to me, that's just a really good rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I would extend that probably to our children and encourage them in that with parked cars. I would say that could be just as much of a
you can call that a room. That is a room.
situation as being alone. But I just think that's a good piece of advice.
I mean, but it's hard for them to go on dates without, or you're saying parked cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good specification. Yeah.
Park your car, get out, and go have your date.
Yes, that makes sense. But then you brought up a good point too, and that is if it's one of the families, right? And
Yeah.
and the guy's like bunking with all the brothers.
Yeah.
Totally, I think that's totally great.
That's
that can be
great.
really fun, or if she's bunking with all of the sisters, I think that could be awesome.
Yeah. The more the merrier.
Yes,
I
that's
just
great.
have people there in your relationship. It's going to be healthier and safer.
Yeah. Or even if it's not family, but it's a group.
Yeah.
It's like a church group, right? A young singles group, and you happen to be dating somebody in your young singles group, but it's clearly divided, where it's like, oh, there's the guy's house and the girl's house, or the guy's wing and the girl's wing. I think that's totally fine. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, we would be comfortable with
Yeah.
that with our kids or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, in every relationship, you can, the buck stops with you. It's like, what is your moral standard? And how are you honoring the other person? And how are you honoring the Lord? And there's no amount of people around or accountability or anything that's going to change that if you don't want to keep a high moral standard, right? You could find ways. But if that is your heart's desire to honor the Lord in that way and honor the person that you're with, there's some things that are just better decisions to make than others in that.
And that was the heart behind your mom giving you that advice.
Yes.
And whether or not it wasn't that it was wrong to be alone
No.
with a man in a room. And you probably found yourself at times alone in a room with a man and became like, oh, okay, I should probably
Yeah,
you
all of
should
a
probably
sudden
get
you're
out of
like,
here.
this is an uncomfortable situation. I shouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah, but you weren't wrong for being in that situation, and you probably didn't walk around with a guilty conscience or anything like that.
No, and I really think a lot of marriages would be better off if they kept to the same rule. It's not that I don't trust Elisha or that Elisha doesn't trust me, but it's a good rule to not be alone with someone of the opposite sex after marriage. So there's just things that are good to have for yourself, for the trust in your marriage, and also just for people on the outside looking in. It is a testimony, and it also does keep you just above reproach.
I agree. Totally agree. Okay. We get 2 questions with this one question. You ready?
Double yoker.
Yeah. Do you have any further thoughts on children's ministry and youth ministry? Do you guys keep your children with you in church services instead of sending them to nursery? And then, we'll start with that one. That's the first question.
So yes to the second question.
What was the second question?
We keep our children in with us.
Oh, so I guess there's multiple questions. There's another part to this question as well. So that's the first part.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so yes to that.
Okay.
And then the other part's like, what's your thoughts
Yeah,
on
so
it?
do you have any further thoughts on children's ministry and youth ministry? Do you guys keep your children with you in church services instead of sending them into the nursery? Yeah. So our kids are all young. They're not youth group age. They are children's ministry age, but we keep them, in the main service with us. Our church is a church that offers like children's ministry, right? Like childcare during the service. And I'd say we're not alone though with keeping our kids. Our church is a very family. It's not like fully family integrated where all the families sit together, but they're very supportive of which we appreciate. As far as youth ministry, I was never a part of a youth group. My family, we were pretty invested in the churches that we attended growing up, but I was never regularly a part of the youth group. I was friends with the kids that went to the youth group. We knew the youth pastors just because, of course, we knew everyone at the church. Our churches had youth ministries like that. And we would occasionally, if there was if it worked out for us to go to a youth event, we didn't think it was wrong, right? So it was like me and my siblings that were at that youth group age would, I don't know, I'm just trying to think if there was like a big concert that we thought sounded fun and the youth pastor, was totally cool with us coming, we would go to the concert or go to a sporting event with everyone or go to a game night. But we were never really a regular part of the youth group. And I think I kind of see it being the same way with our children. I don't see them being a regular part of whatever, our church's youth group. But I hope that they're friends with those kids and that they know them and that they're involved on some level. But I just don't think we'll be the regular weekly youth group family. That's what I think.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, I grew up the same way. I never went to a youth group at all. And then some of my younger siblings have all gone to youth groups on and off. Mm-hmm. I don't know when that started.
Yeah. Classic
backsliders.
Yeah.
No, okay. To get plugged in, I think when they moved to different communities, and but as older kids, we just never went. And I don't know. I think a big emphasis for that is our parents wanted to know our friends. And so they didn't want all of our socializing to kind of be done in isolation. So we would have people over to our house for game nights or playing soccer or volleyball or pizza night or stuff like that. And they viewed that as being like a better use of that evening. And so we were welcome to invite friends over. But that was more the emphasis when I was younger. And that's still the emphasis for my younger siblings at home. But they have totally like gone to youth nights on and off or whatever to meet people, to even invite people over too. So yeah, it totally depend on the church and how many kids we know at the church and how comfortable we are with the youth pastor. And I think we'll probably lean towards inviting people more to our home and doing home-to-home ministry too, having our kids go over to someone else's home or something like that. Versus the church.
I don't know if this was ever a conversation that your dad had with the youth pastor, but I know that my dad was approached by multiple youth pastors at churches that we went to where they voiced a great frustration that he didn't have his children involved in the youth group because the youth pastor really wanted the influence of my dad's children in the youth group, right?
Yeah, like word for word.
Right? Yeah,
How
that happens,
that would happen to
every
my
church we were
parents.
at. And my dad would graciously, be like, hey, it just doesn't work for our family. We really, value our evenings. We value our time together. We're not trying to, isolate ourselves, but it's just not going to work. But the other thing is too, and I don't know if my dad would say this directly, but it's just the truth. It's like influence works both ways. And so as much as the youth pastor would want the positive influence of, my siblings or maybe even myself, who knows, at various seasons, I know my parents were very aware of the fact that they weren't aware of all the kids at the youth group. And so maybe the kids that they knew went there, they might be comfortable with, but they don't know who they're inviting and they don't know who's visiting. And they weren't fearful of us meeting, kids that had different beliefs or different value systems, but they wanted to be aware of it and ideally have that be in environments where they could really coach us through conversations and just kind of know who those people were. Because even in our homeschool life, we got in classic situations that never, proceeded to an unhealthy level, but where all of a sudden you're attracted to somebody or you have a crush on somebody or, you're flirting with somebody that my parents were just kind of like, hey, here's the deal. This is not, you don't want to go down this route with this person. We see this, that, and the other. And they were dead right. You know what I mean? That is the person that, in our naivety, we were like, well, no, they like us. They seem really quality. They care about their faith. And then, then they are, pregnant, 2 months later.
Yeah.
And so I think my parents obviously were discerning and I want to do the same thing for our children. It's not living in fear. Of course, they're going to engage with people that have different moral values. But if you're able to, walk with them through those things versus just send them away at a young age, I'd rather lean that direction.
Yeah, and I think that can really come with, how peer pressured or how people driven or motivated are certain children. And I think even that's probably why things freed up with my younger siblings is because my parents weren't going to send me at 14 and 15 years old. They felt I was too impressionable to go into those situations on my own at that time. But then say my younger siblings that were 13 and 14 and 15 were going with their 17 and 18-year-old siblings who were a lot more grounded, were young adults at that point. And my parents felt very comfortable knowing that there was an older sibling there as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's an element of that shifting in our home. With the kids going and doing things more on their own, where when I was the oldest of the family, my parents really wanted to be there because there wasn't anyone older than me kind of looking out. My younger siblings are pretty good tattletales, though.
Yeah.
Once Kyle and Kelsey were old enough to go, then that's when we started doing things like volleyball at the public school and stuff like that because they trusted us as a pack.
Right.
Even though I think I was pretty trustworthy, but I didn't, I wasn't able to really prove myself.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think I respect that my parents weren't willing to risk it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think we'll be fearful of youth groups. We love our church. And so I'm sure by the time our children are at that age, we'll have a ton of friends that we admire and think the world of that are part of the youth ministry. And so our kids will want to be a part of different functions. I think we'll probably be open to that when the time comes. But I don't think they'll be a regular part of it. And I do think it is just, again, this is a common thing, and our listeners probably wouldn't, hopefully we don't fall into this boat of thinking like, oh, if they're great, they're going to youth group. Like it's sad that that's still a thing where dads get to a point where their children are out of the house, they've denied the faith, they've got their children, their children don't have a faith anymore. They're not professing believers. They don't have a relationship with them. And they say things like verbatim, I thought I did everything right. Like we were at church every Sunday. I sent them to youth group once a week. And what they were not doing was being their pastor at home, right? Being that spiritual mentor in the home and reading the Bible. And they really were thinking they were checking a box by sending them to what we would consider, like the professional or something, being like, well, they're going to be great. They're at youth group. And so I think that happens less but I think that can still be it can still be something that we default to.
Yeah, I think it can still be a popular misconception, thinking that if you sign up for all the church functions, it's taken care of. We're really, the discipleship for our children happens in our home, and then the church can help supplement and support us in that.
Yes, exactly.
But they don't take over that role.
That's a good way to put it, because I think I feel like my parents, they saw themselves as the spiritual shepherds of us, right? As their children. And so when the youth group was advantageous to that journey, whether that was a function or a particular event, that they were like, oh, this would be really good for us. There's a guest speaker coming through. They're like, oh, our kids should go to that event. I already mentioned in a past episode, our youth group went through the I Kiss Dating Goodbye series. And we plugged in for that 8-week thing. I think it was like 8 weeks because the whole youth group was going through it. And so that we plugged in for that particular book study. And so I think that when you are really dialed into where your children are at, it's really apparent when things are going to serve that. And you're like, oh, great. Like, let's plug in right here. Okay, real quick. If you're looking for music lessons for your family, piano lessons, guitar lessons, fiddle lessons, ukulele lessons, mandolin lessons, you can subscribe to Voteberg Music Academy and get lessons for the whole family. Subscribe to the piano course, one subscription, get you piano lessons for the whole family. Subscribe to guitar, that gets you guitar lessons for the whole family. We'll link it below. You get a special discount, and you can see that below by listening to our podcast. That's how you get the discount. Go check it out. Okay, second part of this question. What are your thoughts on extremes in motherhood? Handling overly negative perspectives and also on, so thoughts on extremes. Okay. What are your thoughts on extremes in motherhood? Handling overly negative perspectives and also on unrealistic perspectives, like portraying that there are never challenges in motherhood, and also handling mom guilt when wanting to do something productive you enjoy.
There's so much there.
Yeah, that was a long question.
There's so much there. It's funny. I feel like the negative perspective is something that is an easy line to draw, like the negativity surrounding motherhood, the crude jokes, the disrespect towards the high calling of motherhood, the disrespect towards children, in the name of respecting our children with a lot of different parenting styles, disrespect of husbands and marriage and all that. It's like, we could just throw that out. Like, you could throw out that baby in that bathwater. Like, it's all wrong. And it's not what God's calling us to. It's not his purpose. And it's just a complaining, negative, sour mindset towards one of the greatest things that God has blessed us with. The Lord says, in his scripture, he promises we will be the joyful mother of children. Like, it is a joy to raise children. And yeah, there's bad days and bad moments, and that is every single person in life. That is not isolated to motherhood. And so there's really just no room in my mind to give any of that negativity any bearing. Like, it's just all bad. Yeah,
I feel the same goes for, well, I mean, this isn't about fatherhood, but it's just the same for, like, don't speak poorly about this high calling that God has blessed you with. Like, don't tear down the family. Don't tear down marriage. Don't tear down your spouse. Yeah. Just like under any circumstances ever.
Is that appropriate? Yeah.
It's just inappropriate. Yeah, exactly. It's inappropriate. It's dishonoring to God.
Yeah. It reminds me of like, the Israelites who God brings out of Egypt, and they go, why'd you bring us out of Egypt? There were cucumbers back there and onions. And you're like, you were slaves, and I think of that. I don't want to spit in the face of, like, throw back God's gift to him and reject it when he's given us that gift. So it's just very anti-God mentality. And we need to get away from it as fast as we can. In terms of handling the perfection side of motherhood, maybe what's perceived online or things like that, I think we have two options with that. The first is inspiration. I'm never, I guess very rarely, do I look at someone's life and assume that they have zero challenges, because everyone does. So as an adult, you should know this. I should know this. Everyone has their problems. Everyone has their challenges. And we can take inspiration from someone's life and be like, wow, I want to be a little bit more that way. Even if it's not real in real life, you can be inspired by, like, okay, if I'm seeing someone's house, right? And it's beautiful and it's clean and it's organized and they're showing a decluttering video or something like that. And say 6 times out of 7, their house is a war zone and it just looks beautiful for this
Or on the
video.
other side of the camera, like behind them on the camera,
Yeah.
it's like totally carnage. Yeah.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Right.
Like sometimes I could be motivated, like, wow, I really want to declutter and have a home like that. Like they're painting a picture for me that is inspirational, that's going to inspire motivation. And honestly, I don't want to know that there's diapers, stuff behind the couch and toys all over the place. Like I'd like to just be inspired to go my way and take action. Okay.
Right.
So that's the option. The other option is if you're going through a tough season yourself, which I totally have done, like a postpartum season or something like that. And you're like, okay, seeing like skinny moms is not comforting to me right now. Then just, it's not their fault that they don't have 50 pounds to lose. Just unfollow them or get away from that app or that thing that's causing the stress, I guess. If someone's life looks too perfect to be enjoyed in the moment and you can't find inspiration from it, then don't hate on the person. It's not their fault. Just move on, I guess, and shut yourself off from those influences. I think if you can be 100% off social media as a mother, I would do it. You know, I've been there for 2 years now, and I do like life a lot more.
Being off of it.
Yeah, I didn't think I was falling into the comparison trap or blah, 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 but it totally happens, and it totally can make you discontent.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, those are great answers. I mean, this person said it in the question. They're like, what about the unrealistic perspectives, like portraying that there are never challenges in motherhood? Again, it's just the responsibility of the consumer to know that every marriage has its challenges. And when you're, I don't know, it's like when I don't think people are obligated to air all their like people can share what they want to share.
Yes.
And so if all they share are fun stories about their marriage where they were skydiving and it was romantic dinners and they share the stories where it was 10 out of 10, that's their prerogative. And but then it's your responsibility to understand they're sharing the highlights and they're not sharing the lowlights, right?
And frankly, some people have better marriages and some people do have better homes. And so just because someone's marriage doesn't mirror our marriage, we can't say they're lying because they say they don't argue about that stuff with their husband, or they seem to really be in love with their spouse, or they seem to really enjoy their kids and not have the same problems we have. We can try to learn from that.
Right.
Because I also don't think it's true when we, what do you call it when you like paint your perspective on someone else? It happens in parenting when you like,
I don't
anyways.
know. Yeah, like impose. It's not imposed,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like, yeah.
I forget what it is, but it's like.
It's not portray. Isn't it with a P though?
It is.
Like
It's with a P.
It's like.
I used to tell my dad this all the time when I was a teenager because he'd say, if I were you, I'm not going to let you do this because if I were you, this is what I do. And I'm like, well, I'm not totally you just because I have some of your personality traits. I'm like, I forget what my argument was, guys. Where's my word?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's accurate either because, for instance, you take my parents' marriage. Like I'm so inspired by their marriage. And there's people like, I was just over at my parents' house for Thanksgiving and I see my mom had printed off this photo of when my dad was like 30 years old and he's got his shirt off and he's like flexing under this waterfall. And it was taped on their bathroom mirror with this little note from her. And it's like, okay, they've been married for 30 years. Have I ever done something like that? Probably should know. It's just, she's constantly thinking of little ways to like, I don't know, like love him. And he does the same thing for her. And when I see that, it just reminds me like, this isn't just made up. Like they have this type of marriage where they're constantly thinking about each other. It really inspires me. There's people out there that have those marriages and it doesn't mean they never argue or they never, have their issues, but it's like, I've grown up hearing people my whole life also discredit my parents' marriage and think, oh, it's too romantic and rosy and it's all made up too.
Right. So what you might consider unrealistic.
Yeah. Is actually realistic for somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
It could totally be realistic for somebody.
We know perfection's not realistic.
Yeah.
But saying like, oh, that's unrealistic. It's like, well, what about it's unrealistic? Because somebody's probably actually living that.
Yeah.
Right now.
Like not everything's fake.
Right.
That you see that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes it can even look unbelievable, and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, there's that element too, because I think we're told online that anything that we see that is beautiful or inspirational or, truth, goodness, and beauty basically is a lie. And that's not true, even though there is lots of fraudulent things that go on too. So anyways, just you have to navigate your own soul and your own emotions as an adult when it comes to these things. When it comes to mom guilt, when it comes to what we're seeing and the smorgasbord of life, because this doesn't happen just online. This happens at the church. This happens. I actually really encourage on this Tilly Delahay's book,
Seeing Green,
and her book, My Dear Hemlock, which speaks to women's issues and kind of the ditches that we can fall into as women on either side of the spectrum, idolizing other women or just being like they're terrible and not believing anything's good about them. Or, she has a lot of different perspectives in there that we can fall into as women. So you have to manage your own soul and know what's healthy for you and what's not. Seek the Lord and his guidance. Talk to your husband about it. It's not going to be the same thing for every woman. You know, we might all struggle with these things on different levels, but the solution is going to be different.
Okay, next question. Do you know of any storybooks that normalize homeschool? There are so many books about going to school, but I can't find any that prepare kids for homeschool.
That is so interesting.
It's a good question.
Yeah. Like as she's saying that, I'm like, I don't think so. Yeah. I've never thought about that, but you're so right. It's like there aren't any books on homeschooling. You guys, if you're a writer, that's a genre that apparently doesn't have a big audience, but you should go for it.
Well, I don't know. It's a growing audience.
It is.
I'm sure.
It probably wasn't popular 5 years ago, but you probably sell a ton of little kid homeschooling books now.
Yeah, I thought I'd ask it because I honestly didn't know if you knew of any books. But then it made me reflect on our oldest, getting close to school age, and we lived in a neighborhood. So everybody that he talked to that were neighbors went to school, and he would see them either walk to the bus or be riding their bikes to school, or their parents taking them to school. And it quickly was a discussion, point in our home. When he was like, "What? Like, when am I going to ride the bus?" Or like, "How old do I need to be to go to school?" And then he wanted to go to school because everybody that he knew there was going to school. And we told him, we just were matter of fact about it. We're just kind of like, "Oh yeah, like you're not going to go to school. We're going to homeschool you. That's what we did. We think it's way better. We're excited about it. You're going to love it." Obviously speak positively about it. That's the thing, is that we do get to be salespeople to our children. We should be. We get to frame things to them. And if you believe something is optimal for them, then you should talk about it like it is. Like it's a great opportunity, because you are putting forth a ton of effort and energy to do something that is countercultural and that is less normal. And so you got to sell it. Like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to love this. You're going to have unique experiences that the other kids will never have an opportunity to experience because they are going to public school and they're going to be around the same people for all these years, in this institution. So I do think that regardless of when the conversation starts, you need to be positive. Same if you're going to have a bigger than average family, you need to paint that in a positive light. Right? People are so accustomed to saying like, well, yeah, I know.
Like, don't be apologetic.
Yeah, don't be apologetic. Exactly. Like, it is awesome that you're doing this. And then the conversation never was questioned again once we found a community of, I attribute it to that. I don't know if you're going to attribute it to something else.
No, you're so right.
But all of his best friends now and his peers are all homeschooled. And the people he loves hanging out with, and that he's excited to see on Sunday. He's excited to go to their birthday parties, to have them to his birthday parties. And so it's never questioned again.
Yeah. We joined a co-op, which I do think was important for that stage, for the stage just wanting to be social, be around people. We're very social, I should say, but it was fun to tie in the school and the social element together for this year. And I think that, it was something that, like Elisha said, we just weren't apologetic about it. And I think we were very confident in pointing out the pros that we saw as pros to our kids. Now, we have our own reasons that are spiritual, that are theological, that like we have our own reasons. But then when it came to the kids, it was just like, hey, these kids are at school from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Like, you wouldn't get to go skiing on Fridays. You wouldn't get to, would you like to just sit here all day and do school, or would you like to do it for an hour and a half and then be able to go outside the rest of the day? And just tell them the benefits on their practical level. And I feel like that, even when we were still in that public school environment where everyone around us was public schooled, he was a lot more like, oh, I'm glad I'm public schooled. I'm glad.
Homeschooled, you mean?
Oh, sorry. Homeschooled. Like, I get to go out and jump on the trampoline. Or, like with summer break, it'd be like, see, the kids are all still in school right now when the weather's nice before summer break would hit. Summer break, yeah. And you get to be outside playing, after your math or whatever. So I think just anytime you can, pointing out the benefits unapologetically. And it's not like you're trying to make other kids or other parents feel bad. You're just trying to make your kid feel stoked about what he's doing or she's doing. Yeah,
it'd be like, we get to hang out so much together. A lot of these kids barely get to see their parents because they're away from them all day. And I love hanging out with you. I hope you enjoy hanging out with me.
That too.
Because that is a huge part. We, like you said, you have these reasons where we would never want to, I guess, put our kids under the influence of the state institution of the public school, and be around those peers and those influences. And so, like you said, there's theological reasons. We've got principles, but also I would miss my kids so much. Like, I love being able to see my kids when I pop home in the middle of the day. Anyway, so there's just there's a lot of preferences to this thing for me as well. And I want it to be that way for our children. And then I was going to say something else, just in regards to normalizing something. I do think a great thing about being homeschooled, and this is becoming less because homeschooling is becoming more popular and more common, is I don't think it's bad for your kids to feel abnormal in society. We were homeschooled. We were the oddballs, so to speak, at our church, right? Like, I even think of our church. Our church wasn't a homeschool church. I don't think there were any other homeschool kids. When I say our church, the church we were going to when I was age 11 to 19. So really, like, those critical school years, I feel like, when you care about peers and whatnot. There was no other homeschoolers there, so I was the oddball out there. And I think that's good to start flexing that muscle early and often, because if you want to be exceptional, you're going to be abnormal, right? Like, I understand people's desire to want to normalize something that they think is good. But if you think of, like, the definition of being exceptional, it's like out of the ordinary, right? It's extraordinary, right? Like, we don't want to be ordinary. And I mean, ordinary probably is it's probably a synonym for normal, right? Or like regular. And so I get you don't want to be abnormal in the wrong ways. We don't want to seek to be weirdos or to be a peculiar people in ways that are unnecessary, right? We're already a peculiar people because of what Christ has done in adopting us. But I think knowing that we are going to be a peculiar people our entire life because we are set apart and we are his children, it's all right to have these areas where you get to start talking to your kids about how they are going to be different than most people that they encounter in this area, right? It's a good way to start finding language that's not being way high and mighty, pretentious towards other people, because that never goes well, right? For children when they go and encounter people. And so finding a way to articulate why it is that you're doing, what you're doing, in a way that's not just tearing other people down and saying, oh, well, their parents don't love them. That's why they're sending them to public school, or, they don't love God as much as we do. That's why they're going to
Oh my goodness.
public school. You don't want to go down that route. I don't think, would you say? Yeah.
No, but I will say this. Sometimes I feel like we've communicated things really well, and then I hear the way our kids took it. Like they'll say something and we have to correct it. And like, whoa. You can be a Christian and go to public school, or you can be,
definitely.
Like and I think it's actually really sweet how kids see things as black and white. And I do think that's precious. And as they grow, they start to see nuance. But there are things that as they parrot back incorrectly, what we thought we communicated, then we're able to correct that and, correct that behavior, whatever.
Oh, well, this
because
still
we have
happens.
had that happen.
Oh, I feel like it happens all the time. And I'm sure, hopefully some of our listeners can relate to this. Like, well, we won't even be having the conversation with our kids. Our kids will be in the back and we're driving home from an event where there's other kids and we'll hear like, well, I don't think they were a Christian. And we're like, wait, what'd you say? Like, who's not a Christian? Well, I don't think they were a Christian because I heard them say like, shut up a lot and poop. And you're kind of like,
they said bad words.
Yeah. We're like, those are the words that we don't say in our home, but there are Christians that say those words, and you can be a Christian and say those words. And so that's a classic kid thing.
You got to go back over salvation. Why are we saved? Because of God's righteousness, right? Yeah. And what he's done on the cross. Not because we don't say stupid. Yeah. Let's just correct that right now. But anyways, I do think that, like Elisha said, that's great. It's a good muscle to flex. Just that like, hey, we do life differently, and that's good. And that's why every other kid goes. I mean, you read Little House on the Prairie, and when they aren't freezing to death, they're going to school, right? And like you just can't go back far enough where you find a homeschooled. I mean, you go back to the Victorian era, and they're having tutors, and it's still not your mom teaching you. Yeah. So I do think you hit on a great point too, which is peer pressure is probably your best bet to normalize something. So getting around a homeschooled community would be your best bet in normalizing homeschool. Yeah. If that is something that you're really trying to bring into your home. And
it can be a total asset. I'm not saying like you don't need to make life harder on you than it needs to be by being the only homeschooler that your kid ever meets. Like, I think you are doing him a disservice if that's the case. You can make his life way more enjoyable if you introduce him to some cool homeschool kids.
Yeah, but there's times for both.
Yes. Because,
I mean, our kids, we make a lot of decisions in our home that even like our homeschool friends don't do. And our homeschool friends make decisions that we don't do. Right. And it's good to be like, hey, like we're your parents, we're seeking the Lord, we're doing the best we can. And some things are just going to be house rules because Daddy and I have... what was the word you said?
Policies or
policies. Daddy and I have policies.
Wait, I'm not gonna lie. The word. I was zoning out with like 5 seconds, just the policies. 5 seconds before you asked me that question. So,
yeah, probably longer.
No, it was
policies.
Max.
Trump.
Yeah.
No, wrong topic.
I just gave it my best. That was my best shot. Like I was like, I'm gonna go.
Oh man, we have preferences. Some things are just
that's
preferences.
Actually not that far off from policies
because they both start with a P. Well, you did good with that.
Well, on some policies are like formalized preferences. Somebody preferred it and they formalized it.
You're right. Maybe we should get some house policies.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've said anyways too much.
We can wrap this up, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good. Any closing remarks? Nope.
No. Folks, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.